with the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, as usual, joining me is David Morassutti. David, how you doing, buddy?
I am good. I'm glad that the weather hasn't totally gone as south as I was expecting it to, but happy to be on.
Yeah. The weather has been a bit of a challenge, to say the least. I totally concur, agree, and have witnessed it. And it's been, because I'm trying to do some work outside, so it's affecting what I'm trying to do. And it's been an interesting, fall, and it is fall. Don't get fooled. The leaves are starting to come down. We're down to the crunch in the Canadian Football League. More or less, the Labor Day game was usually the beginning of the real season. I think this week, next week, are going to be keys to the season. This is when, we get to past the halfway mark and now the home stretch, right? And what we're seeing is, and what we've seen so far, we've talked about this prior to the season. How ready would the players be and the organizations ready to be playing? And much like a player that comes back from injury, those first couple of games a player plays are really on adrenaline, the excitement of playing after being away. And I think this season has been a lot like an injured player.
Yeah, no, and we've seen a lot of it. I mean, the games, there have been some good games, and there have been some games where it's, you're kind of like, the injuries have played a big part in that. I mean, it's only natural 2 years after not playing, almost 2 years of not playing, you're gonna get some bumps and bruises. But I think I didn't expect it to a certain level with certain players. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some inconsistent play by a lot of players. We've seen inconsistent play by receivers, kick returners. Offensive lines have been up and down, heroic and then the GOAT. We've seen defenses and defensive players whom we've expected to be really good not be very good at times, and defensive players, some of them, for example, never mind for example. Anyway, speaking just generally here, it's been an inconsistent season thus far. Do you think it's getting better, or are they stuck in this mode of inconsistency? Because that's my biggest observation, either a criticism or a compliment or making excuses. That's been the thing that I've noticed the most is, more than any other year, there's been a lot of inconsistency this year.
Yeah, the two for me have been tackling and cat and drops.
Route running too. You could throw route running in there too. The communication between quarterbacks and receivers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and it's not just route running; it's timing too, right?
Yes.
Right. And the tackling one is it's an interesting one because usually in season you're not doing tackling drills because
Right.
there's not enough time, because you're worried more about defensive positionings and what coverages you're working on and those things, which is why training camp is usually when you see most of those tackling drills. But the other problem is we've had quite a few. I mean, we've had how many new head coaches come in, and their priority is to establish their the playbook and their
whatever they think's important,
right? And,
whatever that is, right?
yeah, and like how do you practice tackling when you're not able to practice with someone during a pandemic, right?
And contact, ironically, no pun intended, contact is an issue at practice.
Exactly.
Right? And now it's doubly an issue. Before it was contact because you didn't want players to get hurt. Now it's contact, minus contact so they don't get sick. So it's been a very interesting season. But before I give the impression that has been a horrible season, it hasn't been a horrible season by any stretch. It's been very compelling. It's been very interesting. And the problems that we just talked about, everybody had the same go-to, right? The only difference that I think this season where advantages are had are the teams that are coming in with a roster that's very similar to the one that went out in 2019, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, continuity is always see if we've always mentioned continuity in the CFL has always been the biggest challenges for front offices, but mostly coaches because you and it's not just continuity from guys that are coming and going, but it's also in season because we've seen
Yes.
a lot of teams have to bring in guys. Otto. I mean, we're
Oh,
gonna. Otto
Otto.
is bringing in a new quarterback yesterday, and he might play depending on how the quarterbacks are.
Well, after what happened in that first game this
Yeah,
week, which was a Wednesday night football game,
we
which
have
I'm
Tuesday
not
night
I'm
football.
not too used to that. That's it's not that it's never happened before, but it's amazing that that's on the schedule. I'm not a big fan of Wednesday games. Football's a weekend sport. I know the NFL, but the NFL they've got 32 teams. They can spread out
Yeah,
and not only was there a Wednesday game this week, there were only 3 games.
and Frank, not only that, we have a Tuesday night game tomorrow.
It's coming. it's
It's like that's part of it. I always said that yes, football needs to be. It's not something where you're rushing to get to. It's one of those experiences where you like to go to you like to tailgate for the day. Catch up with people because once you're inside the stadium, your eyes and focus is on the game. It's not like
absolutely.
baseball where you can kind of leisurely watch, talk, have a conversation, and then a play happens. Football, it's like you're into it right from opening kickoff. Yeah, halftime, you can get some of the conversation that you were missing early on, but yeah, the whole Friday night, like Friday night's good once in a while. Thursday night, Wednesday night, if it's necessary. Although, yeah, I don't know how. I think part of the issue is the soccer season, right?
Yep.
You've got, Ottawa has a soccer team to deal with. Toronto, actually, almost every CFL team now has a Canadian Soccer League or MLS team that they have to kind of work with. So that's part of the issue. But yeah, the schedule kind of I didn't even realize there was a game tomorrow until I was doing some research, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I have ever in my life watched a CFL game on a Tuesday night. That's
I actually was at a Tuesday game, the Argos in Hamilton. I believe it was a Tuesday night,
oh god, how many years ago was that?
3, 4 years ago. It
Really?
is when, yeah, it was when I believe they had a Tuesday game back then, after 2012. Pretty sure. Um, the thing about the schedule is that I don't want to, there's no point. Nobody's going to
Mhm.
bash the schedule. I mean, the schedule that they had to make was one that they had to make literally on the fly because it was a proposed schedule that had to be possible and the ability to execute. So I can imagine how difficult it was for the schedule maker to create a schedule that, they all knew, every team knew there was a distinct possibility that a game might be canceled. So, it's like, I'm committed to the schedule, but something might go wrong. And it did, of course, with Edmonton and Toronto, that game being moved to November 16th. And not only did it move, but it changed a few other games as well to accommodate the fact that Edmonton would be playing 3 games in a week. So, it's not an easy situation, the scheduling. That has to be difficult on the players. The league is back. So let's talk about the positive stuff because I don't want this to sound like we're just
So
nitpicking.
Frank, I did a little research, just quick research. You are correct. The Argonauts did play on a Tuesday night.
Yep.
They played on Tuesday, July 30th, 2013, against the BC Lions.
That was a different. That was in Toronto. Then that was at the Sky Dome.
That was at Rogers Center. I actually have the full. So the attendance at the game was 20,000, which by today's standards would be really good for an Argo game. You still had Andre Dury, Chad Owens. You had Zach Collaros at quarterback, Khalif Mitchell. These are
Yeah,
names that go back.
yeah.
So yes, I had to make sure that because I the Tuesday night things threw me off so much. I'm like, I have to verify this to make sure it's
Against a feline, but a different feline.
yeah. But you were right. It was right after 2012. So good on your memory for that one.
Yeah, well, hold on. It just look to the point. That's what happens when you play on a Tuesday. When you have a game to go to on a Tuesday, it's memorable. It's hard to forget.
Yeah,
You know, it is what it is. So yeah. So and that was what it was then. And now what we've got. Enough about the schedule. Now about about the games. I was just saying that I really think the games have been good. The games have been great to watch. Half of the excitement of watching the games is just being able to watch the games if you're a CFL fan.
yeah.
And then the other half of the important part is if they can come up with a decent game that's, it really, I mean, we haven't eaten the game in a while, so it tastes good, even though maybe it's a bit more like a hot dog than it is a steak.
Well, and the other thing is how many blowouts have there been? There have been.
Well, there've been blowouts. There've been blowouts. Unfortunately, where we sit and where we sit during games, most times there've been a lot of blowouts recently. So I don't think this year's any different. If you're an Argo fan, there's been less blowouts this year. But I assume what you're talking about is overall how many
Overall,
blowouts. Yeah,
you know,
and you've got a couple of teams that have been not playing well. Ottawa's not been very good. Hamilton had a slow start. Calgary, there's a real fluctuation in the power rankings, if I can use that TSN term, the power rankings in the Canadian Football League. It's been a mess. It's not been predictable in a way. And what I'm talking about is outside of Winnipeg. The,
yeah,
Hamilton hasn't been what we thought they would be. Not just you and me. I mean, generally, right?
yeah,
Hamilton was to be the team that would dominate the East from start to finish. They're the team with two great quarterbacks. They have revenge on their mind. Nobody's more motivated than Hamilton to get to the Grey Cup, to win, and all that kind of stuff. But we've seen a lot of new improved teams like BC. They've really done a great job.
yeah.
And we've seen the handful of teams that have not played as well as they should. I mean, we assumed Montreal would be better, Calgary would be better, Ottawa would be better. Better than what they are anyway,
Yeah,
right?
it couldn't get any worse. That's
Right. And so, and then you've got, you know, you've got football that for us is happening, and that's the most important thing.
yeah. I mean, I think the good thing about this season is, other than Winnipeg, it hasn't been as predictable as maybe some of us have,
We
made up.
thought it would be, yeah.
I had BC at the bottom of in my predictions for sports, and I had BC at the bottom of the standings, and I'm like, they're serving me my lunch right now. Winnipeg, I
Uh,
had them second or third, right? They're feeding me my lunch as well.
I had Edmonton as a better team than they are.
Yeah, I mean that this is I think this, if you're a CFL fan, this is kind of good in that sense that it's a little bit different. And I mean it provides a little more intrigue because now you're going into a game thinking, oh, there's a good chance that X team might actually lose or X team might win.
Yep,
That's kind of what you want out of a league that has, I think, for the last few years been a little bit too predictable on how their outcomes have been.
absolutely. Well, let's get down to specifically the games and the reason why we have said what we've said about Hamilton and Ottawa.
Yeah.
Hamilton went to Ottawa and won 24-7, and it was a rain fest. It came down hard there. David Watford was the Tiger Cat quarterback. We talked about the two great quarterbacks they have. Neither was under center.
Yeah. I there was some talk that Mazzoli might have been able to get in, but You know, they didn't, and when a game in the rain too, I think it made a lot of sense to go with Watford. Ottawa, I mean, out of all the teams that maybe you can predict a team to beat, it is Ottawa. So it's like, do you want to take the chance that you Mazzoli further injures whatever he's dealing with in a game against Ottawa? Probably not. So putting in Watford did make the most sense, and it paid off for them.
Yeah, it was a great pregame. It was a sorry, it was a great preseason game for them. You know, it really was. That's
Yeah.
the sad truth.
Well, and yeah, like that's the now. There's two issues about the CFL that we're going to get into with this game. I think one is preseason. This is what preseason games are for. The preseason games aren't for the starters. It's
No.
for the third, fourth guy to come in because of an injury. Because now a coach doesn't know what a guy is going to be able to do because he hasn't seen him. I'm going to bring in the Argos quickly. Ryan Dinwiddie said he wanted to get Antonio Pipkin in because they hadn't been able to get him in. And who knows, an injury to McLeod Bethel Thompson on top of Nick Arbuckle already being out, Antonio Pipkin's the next guy, and he hasn't seen any snaps in real games. So, yeah, this
It
is
was no coincidence, if I can interrupt just for a second, it
yeah,
was no coincidence that he went in after McLeod Bethel Thompson was in pain on the sideline.
no, and they ran him like there. He was out there more than I think people expected on obvious passing
Yep.
situations where you knew that the quarterback would have to sit in the pocket a little bit more. So yeah, and in this game, we not only saw Ottawa go with Hamilton go with their third QB. Ottawa didn't even have a QB going into the fourth quarter with the game still in reach.
Yep. We're talking a receiver under center.
Um, and unfortunately, on the night that they were in honoring Brad Sinopoli,
Absolutely. They could have used him.
Brad Sinopoli,
They could have used him.
Ottawa's front office is just going, would have been nice if Brad had waited one
Is
more.
he at the game? Is he at the game? Is Brad at the game?
Well, he was there. They were honoring him. Like, hey, Brad, did you bring your cleats with you? Did you bring your athletic gear with you? We might need you to go in.
How do you feel about being a quarterback?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and David Watford, did what he needed to do. He hasn't come in and torn up like we've seen backups really do a nice job over the past few years, right? I mean, Trevor Harris, Zach Caleros, Arbuckle. We've seen, lots of quarterbacks come in and prove their worth. He hasn't proven his worth, but he's also not proven that he's a liability. And I think if you're the Hamilton Tiger Cats at this point with two quarterbacks already in the infirmary, the third guy, if he doesn't hurt you, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean that. If I'm a backup if I were to ever be a backup quarterback, my mantra would be: do not be the one that makes the mistake and get yourself pulled.
Right.
You might miss a throw, but I will miss a throw instead of forcing a throw that shouldn't be made. Because the team has already, you can already tell that when the team loses a couple quarterbacks, there's a little bit of edge with the other, especially on defense. We really have to, hold these guys because our offense doesn't have the main guns throwing the ball. So if I'm the backup quarterback, I'm going to give my team every benefit of the doubt that I'm going to not make the mistakes to put them in bad positions, right? And so
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, in this game too, it's like Ottawa's defense is still a good defense. They were not going to make that game easy on Hamilton.
Not at all.
As I've continued to say, when your offense puts you in bad positions, your defense can only do so much to keep you in the game.
You know what drove me crazy in that game? And it's still Nichols and the two passes for 9 yards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of the things that I think, Nichols is one of his weaknesses where he doesn't seem to make long passes and you got to get a first down. You can't make two passes and then kick the ball. You know, you've got to, and especially when he completes to them, because when you look at his percentage, he was 7 for 10, right? That's 70%. That's pretty good. I'm
Yeah.
looking at here, right? His longest was 26 yards. Great. But, 68 yards in total. You take away that 26-yard one, and that leaves you with 42 yards in the other six throws.
Yeah. Right. And this is, I understand that, play calling has something to do with it. You know, is Lap Police calling for him to throw the ball as far down? You know, other is having the confidence to do it as well. If you feel like, as we just said, if you don't want to be the quarterback that puts your defense in a bad position because you turn over the ball, well, okay, I'm going to take what the defense gives me. Hamilton's like, okay, throw for those 6-7 yards, because unless, and Ottawa can't run the ball,
That's the beginning of the problem for them.
right? Ottawa can't run the ball, so they're like, okay, we'll take our chances on a 2nd and 3. That you're gonna have to throw it, and you're gonna have to, and they're gonna be really aggressive on those plays. And so, yeah, I can't believe, like, I can believe where we are with Nichols, just because that injury, it just, when you get older, those injuries are tougher to come back from. And maybe we thought Lap Police would be able to work his magic with him, but if he's working with a quarterback that's just not in physically where he's supposed to be, there's only so much you can expect.
Let's put it in context as well, David. The last time they were together in Winnipeg, that was they were like 4 or 5 years into developing that team.
Yes.
Bringing in a coach, bringing in quarterbacks, bringing in the defense, bringing in the offense, offensive line, all that lovely stuff, special teams. They had built towards a Grey Cup, and they were both there at the pinnacle of the success that Winnipeg had. They weren't coming to a team that would, like, I wouldn't even call Ottawa right now a rebuild, because they're not even at the part. They're at the build part. I mean,
Yeah, I don't even know what stage they're really. It can't
they're at the foundation. There's everything they're doing is foundational. They're bringing in the coach. They don't have a quarterback. They bring in a quarterback that needs to prove himself, being Nichols. They have a guy they had before, but the reason they brought Nichols in is because Dominique Davis wasn't the guy that they could trust with being on his own and have a backup for him, if you follow my meaning. So this is a team that for the past few years, unfortunately, I'm not too convinced that it's been generally managed well. It
No.
Too many holes, and too many holes stay holes, and then other holes develop. It's whack-a-mole without a hammer.
And let's not forget, in the CFL, you know, you can turn things around a little bit quicker with the right
Yeah,
moves in the right spots. You get a
absolutely.
good quarterback, that's going to mean a lot for your offense. You get some, strong veteran leadership on defense, and you got a chance. Like, we've seen. I mean, I'm gonna.
Ottawa had a good defense in 19. I think it
Yes.
was better than the one they have today.
I think even more so, you know, not having, like, you had how many years to make sure you had a quarterback, and not just one, right? We've already said you need more than one quarterback. They haven't put any, but they haven't really put much effort into developing a younger guy, right? There should be a younger guy working with Nichols, working with Dom Davis, just to make sure that you are setting your team up, for when these guys may not be, they might decide next year, you know what, Nichols, yeah, we can't do this. We're going to go in a different direction. But what's that direction? There isn't a direction right now. And I don't put that on Lab Police. And I think a lot of Ottawa Red Black fans would actually put that on the general manager, who has made some very, no, 2019, you and I were in a show together when Ottawa let go Rick Campbell,
Yep.
right? And that situation and how that all played out, losing Trevor Harris and not replacing him, or not even having someone in line to replace him. Those are things that fall on the general manager, because the general managers have to be looking down the road of what this team needs to be successful.
to your point, you don't even have to develop the quarterback, but you have to identify him.
Yes.
Zach Caleros was in Toronto. He was identified as a good quarterback, so Hamilton signed him. Trevor Harris was a good backup quarterback. He ended up going to Ottawa. Um, Arbuckle proved to be a good backup, maybe a starter, and Toronto picked him up from Calgary. Mike Riley was in, I think he was in BC, and then he went to Edmonton to become a starter. So the point I'm trying to make is in support of what you're saying. It's not just it's not just they appear. They actually, there's quarterbacks everywhere in the Canadian Football League.
Mhm.
It's your job as a general manager to either develop your quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Bo Levi Mitchell was in in Calgary. They lost the Grey Cup to the Argos. He was hurt. He came back the next year and became Bo Levi Mitchell. So, there are quarterbacks everywhere. And the key for organizations is you don't have to develop them, but you have to identify them. So, in a way, you have to have the ability to identify a good quarterback and hopefully develop them in your own ranks or find them somewhere else where they're not appreciated to the extent that they should be. Or you offer them a little more money than the other team does, and you end up with them. And you gamble that way. But Ottawa hasn't made that kind of gamble except for now with with a quarterback who's had injury problems, historic injury problems. We're not talking about, well, this is the first time he's been injured, he'll recover from this fine. He has been repeatedly injured, and I think he's emotionally how can a player, a human being, handle the change that Nichols went through, the physical handicaps that he's been dealt, the unfair injuries, and I refer to them as unfair because I've seen a few of them. I was in the stadium, the one in Skydome when he was basically the starting quarterback for Edmonton. The guy has not had any luck, but the problem is the GM has to identify the strength of that position. And in Ottawa, the strength at certain positions hasn't been identified, and or worse, is being ignored with no solution to be seen.
Yeah. And that's the big problem there is that, look, having Matt Nichols there is fine, but who are you making sure? Because even Winnipeg realized it. Who are we bringing in behind him to make sure that we can move forward if he's not able to go? Calgary, didn't have Bo Levi Mitchell to start. After the first game of the season, they had to go, and everyone thought it was going to be O'Connor, but then they went with Jake Meyer.
Who's turned out he's one of those guys that can be a starter. I
And
think we've seen from him enough to say he could be a starter.
well, and this is a situation where is Bo Levi, that situation in Calgary where they're clearly developing O'Connor to be a starter in case down the road either Mayer or Bo leave Calgary. So you need to have that factory, right? You can stash that one guy away and keep him, keep developing him if you see that he has the tools to be the right quarterback.
Absolutely.
BC's doing that right now with Nathan Rourke behind Michael Riley. You have to have. I feel like the teams that are going to be more successful down the road are the ones that have that guy developing, waiting for his turn, because as soon as it's time, he'll be ready because he's been in it for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's everybody is trying as hard as they can, to fill a position. To stay on the quarterback thing. I didn't even mention Dane Evans, right?
Yeah.
So they're there. There are quarterbacks there. If you look real careful, you can find them. So in Ottawa, to make sure we finish up with Ottawa. So Ottawa right now looks like a team much like the team in 2019. Doesn't look any different. Doesn't look even as good defensively as they were back in 2019. I'm really concerned, with their season that they need to hang in there and win a few games for the sake of their fans. This show here, it's a show for the fans. the game, as far as the way people love the game, is important to me, and I think Ottawa needs maybe to make a change at general manager. I mean, somebody has to say, is the team improving? Are we making moves that make the team better?
Yeah.
Well, you can't just hire a coach and you can't just bring in a quarterback, because if the coach doesn't have the players and the quarterback doesn't have the protection, you know, especially when he got sacked. Not that quarterbacks don't get sacked, but he got sacked again, in that game against Hamilton. So that's the issue. Does Ottawa have the future in front of them that says they'll be better, the immediate future? And I'm afraid no is the answer.
Two things on that is, one thing that can turn away is Ottawa's got a really good, passionate fan base. The last thing you want is to turn them
Yes,
away because your team because you made so many errorist moves to not make the team competitive. It's one thing to lose games and be continuing to lose, but I think fans will have more sympathy for a team that is losing games but is in those games and competitive
absolutely. They
right
need to
throughout.
be.
Which
They
is
have. You're
exactly
100% right.
which is exactly why the CFL taking away the third quarterback and the team's abilities to start a third quarterback does more harm to the CFL product than I think a lot of other decisions lately.
Yeah, it's all about the cap. It's all about
Yeah,
finances and stuff. But yeah, it's looking a lot like yeah, you have to have a third
you
quarterback.
have to.
Um,
The last thing you want is to see a receiver. Look, the NFL got scrutinized when the Denver Broncos had to start a receiver at quarterback in a regular season game.
oh boy,
And how does the CFL not say, you know what? Why don't we not be like the NFL and make sure our teams are prepared for a scenario where, hey, you know what? There's a good chance on a rainy game. Let's not forget this game had a lot of rain, so good chance that a quarterback can slip and
absolutely.
hurt himself. Let's make sure that we can give teams that third quarterback spot, and I'll guarantee a lot of teams would take that right now based on how many quarterbacks they have lost so far this season.
Good segue would be so Hamilton wins 24-7, walking away. Montreal comes into Toronto, and once again, Toronto's playing in a game where the negative is they're letting a team back in the game. The positive is they shut the door in time. So this was another game like the last game they played, where against Hamilton it was a field goal that hit the upright that saved their bacon.
Yep.
And this one here, we saw what you're talking about. What we've been talking about is Pitkin came in. No coincidence. And as you said, Dinwiddie said, I'm looking for a chance to bring him in. And I totally agree with that theory. And hopefully they will get him in. And it's important that Pitkin get a chance, not necessarily to start, but throw him in there for a couple of packages, which they did. And that's a great idea. I like the forward thinking.
I like teams who do that because they're clearly thinking about, you know what, the last thing we want is have our quarterback get hurt or something happens and then the other guy is kind of shell shocked that he has to go in because he hasn't touched the ball. He hasn't had the feel of a snap. Because that's the first thing, what's the first thing a quarterback does when the other quarterback gets hurt? He throws a couple of balls to get himself loose, but he also starts to take snaps.
Right.
He's got to have a hand for the ball.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it's totally
Especially this
different.
year.
And it's totally different though when you have a bunch of defensive linemen coming at you, ready to take you to the ground. And
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, Toronto, Ryan Dinwiddie, if there's anything I've learned from him in his coaching career, he is one to take every precaution he can. If he knows a guy is hurt, he's not going to put them in. If he knows a guy can't isn't at his best because of an injury, he's not going to force him to go in. So seeing Pipkin come in and then hearing that, oh, McLeod was a little banged up, so we didn't want to, further injure him. That speaks to a coach that understands, yes, a player might want to go in, and we've seen it countless times, but it's the coach's responsibility to do what's right for the team, and things like that definitely are right for the team when injuries have hurt a lot of teams in the past.
I might be wrong, but my like I said earlier, my opinion on that was he put Pitkin in. He was prepared to put him in. He's got packages.
Yeah.
The playbook includes every quarterback, right? There's they and Dinwiddie, as you said, being prepared for the less obvious and or the surprise, has that ready. So he had already, and he said in the interview, the post game interview, that he's been looking for a chance for Pitkin to come in there and exercise some of the packages that he is ready to perform,
Yeah.
to execute. And it wasn't a coincidence that Bethel McLeod Bethel Thompson got hurt. Macbeth got hurt. He got dinged. He was on the sideline. They were checking him out. So he just bought McLeod and the training staff a little time to make sure that McLeod could go back in, not just trot him out there, like you said, just because, I need to, he's the best guy on the sideline. I got to bring him in.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, that's important. And that speaks to what we're talking about quarterbacks. Right. And the more he gives Pitkin a chance, the more Pitkin is ready to go in there in the event he's needed. And because their quarterback Arbuckle's out, he's basically the backup quarterback. So, that's why you need to bring him in. And it's great that they did. And in a game like this too, that it wasn't it wasn't a blowout. They weren't getting, they weren't having, the Argos were neither handing their lunch to Ottawa or getting Ottawa's lunch. They were in a real tight game. And I think that was great that Pitkin went in. That speaks, a lot about the coach, like we've said. And it speaks also to Pitkin, who didn't make any mistakes and didn't look out of place.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was, I think there was the one short yard play where he got stopped at the line. But other than that, yeah, throwing the ball was the big one, right? The timing with the receivers. He missed. There was one that he tried to go deep, but it was missed. He completed a first down. Like things like that. It's all about timing and
Yes.
being able to read a defense in action versus practice, and also feeling the getting hit too, being able to absorb contact as well.
For me, the fact that Judge and Mwamba were out, and then at the last second, Rogers ended up out.
Yeah.
Three pretty key players, David, that they had to play the game without and or find substitutes. Next man up.
Veteran guys, and the guy who led the Argos in receiving yards was on their practice roster before the game, right? That
That's right.
we constantly hear every coach, next man up, next man up. Well, that's exactly what we got in that game. Almost all the players that were big contributors for the Argos were not considered starters going into the season.
Absolutely. Chandler Worthy, biggest play of the game. What a pass that he got, a highlight reel pass, and a incredible pass by Macbeth. Macbeth came into this league and was not a real deep threat. You and I covered him and we thought, well, okay, Carter comes in, maybe now he'll have a deep threat, right? It hasn't worked for him, but this year he's starting to, and I believe it has a lot to do with Dinwiddie, but it also has a lot to do with Macbeth's commitment to being a quarterback. Remember, he played in another league just to keep busy, just to keep playing. So this guy's committed to being a player, committed to being a quarterback, and committed to his teammates, and never stops talking about how great his teammates are. So, he's a great team player. He works really hard. He doesn't complain except when it comes to beating himself up.
Yeah. No, his personality is one of the, it's one that you have to, when you talk to him enough, you really understand what's important to him. And it's always, his relationship with Worthy, I didn't realize how big it was until we talked to him, right?
Yeah.
And I also think it's his faith in those guys, and he's like, I want to get Chandler Worthy going, so I'm going to give him more opportunities. That's as a teammate. If I'm and Chandler Worthy took, he said, okay, you're going to give me the chances, I'm going to make the most of it. That's where you have the trust in your teammates for those situations. And I mean, for the Argos, the Argos went into that game. Not many people expect them to win. I said, well, I give
Again,
give them a chance. Their defense, they made sure that their depth was addressed in the offseason. You know,
That's a fair statement, though, considering what Montreal was. Remember, we've been talking about Montreal, and they're a little bit of a disappointment. We expected more from them,
yeah.
and we're expecting them to break out much, not as well as Winnipeg did or Saskatchewan did. With last week's Saskatchewan's defeat of Toronto, which was basically a comeback week for them. Winnipeg's just unbeatable, it seems. And Hamilton's making their way back, and I expect Montreal to be in there for that second seed in the Eastern Division, whether it's Toronto at the top or even Montreal at the top or Hamilton at the top. I expect Montreal to be at least fighting for second place in the Eastern Division.
And in this game, the reason why they didn't win, Vernon Adams Jr. did not make the right plays at the right time.
No, he's not. He's not the same guy we saw in 2019. Every gamble that he made, and some were really big gambles and really risky throws, worked out for him. This year, not so much.
Yeah, that's that I think is the biggest thing when it comes to in that game. Like, a lot of people were on Chris Jones in the defense for not being great. I said, well, I didn't expect them to be a Chris Jones defense in 1 week. But it was a it's that turnover in the second, just before the second half, that led to the Chandler Worthy touchdown. It's the interception late in this fourth quarter that kept Montreal from not only tying the game, but even maybe taking the lead. You know,
Yeah.
and Vernon Adams, the criticism has been, we know that he's a great athlete. He has the best running back in the CFL right now.
As Eugene Lewis.
He has the guys that can make plays. Even Winicky.
Yeah, well, he made a great play in that game. I
That,
mean, again, this is another time where the Argos opened the door a little bit for the
yeah,
opposition.
that's, I think. I mean, if you're gonna look for Chris on the Argos, the putting teams away hasn't been there yet.
But again, they haven't given it back completely. So that's a good thing.
Yes, they haven't. It hasn't led to a loss.
No.
Let's just say that. But yeah, I mean,
And not break.
yes, but if I'm Montreal and I'm Vernon Adams, I'm very disappointed in that a game where the Argos look to be in at a disadvantage because of all the injuries.
Absolutely.
They beat themselves in a lot of ways.
Yes,
And
and
that's the
that's to be
disappointment.
expected. And it's easy to cast blame. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm just saying it's how do you decide? A team wins, a team loses. Is it the team lost, or is it the team won, or is it a combination there, of the above? So that's usually the case, in my opinion. So Argos win. Good for them. They defeat Montreal 30-27. Our final game of the week, the third game, Saskatchewan defeated BC 31-24. I'm going to say this was probably the best game, the best game in the sense of you didn't know who was going to win. And this was a game that the fans on both sides could complain about, whether it be the way their team played, whether the way the officials called the game. There was a lot of, I wish that didn't happen, situations in that game. Look at Lucky Whitehead wasn't so lucky.
Oh, I know. I mean, it's funny how a game can get flipped very easily if one little thing happens.
Absolutely. And this had a lot of things happen.
Oh my God. I mean, right off the hop too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've continually said, even with Lucky Whitehead, I tweeted it out. He's worth a game admission alone.
Yeah.
I
Good and bad, because it's starting to look like that. He needs to really, ball security needs to be, top of mindset for him.
Yeah, and you wonder, as a team, do you take that fumble once in a while if he can produce those massive plays? Fumbles are crucial in the CFL, that's for sure.
It's the multiple ones.
It's the
David,
multiple
that's the
ones. You
problem.
gotta he has to do like what the Bill Belichick rule. You do a fumble, you gotta hold around a football every time you're when you're walking around the facility, you got to hold that football in your arms. You know what? It's a matter of, okay, you know that these guys want to make big plays. You know that that's their motive. At what point do you say, okay, I need to focus a little bit more on holding that ball and not gaining the extra 2 to 3 yards? That's what annoys me the most. When a player is clearly stopped, I understand the need to push forward and make it tough on the defense, but
Stretch your hands out,
stretch your hands out.
untuck
Or
the ball.
the worst, yeah, or the worst is untuck the ball or put one arm to try to push a defender, and then another guy comes at you and strips the ball.
Right.
You got it's a thing as a receiver. You gotta, especially receivers, you have to really pay attention to. And I think, look, he's got guys there, Brian Burnham, uh, that can kind of reel him in a little bit and be like, hey, we gotta be you gotta be a little more cautious because they'll give up those yards if they mean they can get the turnovers.
And it also can be, and this is the issue with players that are great returners, and there are a few, Brandon Banks at the top of the list, right? Chandler Worthy, the Argos are hoping he'll be that guy. We've seen many a great kick returner and put them in a position as a receiver. There's always the concern that it's not that you're asking him to do too much, in the sense that, he doesn't have the talent to do both, but you're asking him to physically maybe do too much. And in that moment of being tired, when you're tired, that's when you make your mistakes. You and I both. I'm sure there are times you wish you didn't do something because you were tired, and then present it as, the finished product. When you're tired, you're not as effective as you are when you're not. So what has to happen is you have to really identify your weaknesses. So you're right. You're talking about the Bill Belichick thing. The point being that now, Chandler Worthy, same thing. He lost the ball too. That's the thing about these guys, is that they can't, and Whitehead has to bear down and not leave the ball unprotected. It's what you do the next game after this. It's all about, just like in life, right? We all make mistakes. The question is, do we, can we, or will we commit to not making the same mistake? And that's what has to happen with these guys.
And the other thing too is, like, and I'll bring Worthy in for a second. He fumbled
Yes.
a kickoff. So he said it was on me to atone for it. Lucky
And that's the
Whitehead
truth.
What Lucky Whitehead needs to do is say, okay, if I'm going to have a play like that, it needs to be my duty to make up for it. Because the last thing you want is for your teammates to think, this guy cost us the game. And no player, and I don't think teammates sometimes are like, it's not just the one play that costs us the game,
Confidence, man.
but it's the confidence, and someone has to not only bring him in a little bit in a way that it's done properly, but also be like, hey, we got you, but you have to there's got to be a little bit of an awareness here.
A business approach to the game. There has to be a business approach to the game, that it's a business. You're in the business of being a positive factor for your team, and doing positive things need to. This is the horrible thing about it, is that you can do a lot of positive things, but if you do negative things, that positivity disappears, and now you're a non-factor. And if you're a non-factor, then how important are you to the team? So yeah, to become a factor, the greatest example of that for me is Nichols. Matt Nichols was a guy who, in Winnipeg, he didn't do much of the flamboyant stuff, but what he never did was put his team in a bad position. He left his defense with a good defensive position when he turned the ball over. And by turned it over, I mean, 2 and out, whatever. He still made sure that he advanced the ball and put his defense in a good position. And he didn't give the ball away, and that makes a player better, because every little thing they do that's positive is far more important. So
Yeah, and I credit Saskatchewan for making most of those. It's one
yeah,
thing to do
Saskatchewan's a great team, and Fajardo proved that
yeah.
every game he proves that he's the real deal. A lot of us could question it, right?
Not only that, it's also they're not making as many mistakes. Like, it's if another team's making mistakes, you can't give it back to them by making a mistake yourself. And that's the one thing Fajardo does well. Is he doesn't make those mistakes, and we're seeing he's able to get those game winning drives, and with and even that defense to get the fumble, return it for a touchdown. You know,
Yep.
those are game changing plays. If your quarterback maybe is struggling to get the ball in the end zone, I mean, I can't remember how many field goals Saskatchewan had in that game.
Three,
They had quite a few. Sorry, Lawler had 4 field goals,
4.
right? So you're dealing with a quarterback that
Yeah.
yes, he had a touchdown, but he wasn't exactly getting into the end zone as much as he probably should have been. So
But again, advancing the ball,
yeah,
giving special teams a chance,
yes.
it's a positive, right?
Well, for
Instead
sure.
of,
It's against that BC defense, that's very, very
instead of going backwards. Well, they're good against the run. I mean, you got a guy like William Powell. When I say he ran for 42 yards, that's not a William Powell evening.
no. It's not a willing, especially after he had 120 something yards against the Argos.
Absolutely.
BC also sacked Fajardo 4 times.
Yes.
Right? They intercepted him they got an interception against him. So it's when in those crucial moments, okay, we have to really boggle down and make the right plays. And that's what he did. And you have to give him a lot of credit for that, because I thought BC was going to win that game.
They
It
looked
looked like they were on their way to winning that game, and Fajardo was like it was like in that moment he realized what he needed to do. And BC didn't have the ball a lot either, and that was
no.
crucial. That was crucial for Saskatchewan. Even when they weren't rushing the ball a lot, they didn't give it to BC a lot either.
Absolutely. You are 100% right. The game of football always comes down to, it's a community effort, right? And even within, as we said, even within individuals, they create a community effort. There is sum and total of their total game. And when it comes to total game, one thing we're seeing in the Canadian Football League this year, like we've always seen, the best teams are the teams that have the 3 phases of their game figured out.
Mhm.
If one is really bad, it's hard to be a really good team. And both these teams, fighting for second place in the Western Division, have proven that they have 3 really good ways of playing the game. They handle special teams, defense, and offense, really well. And you're right, BC with Michael Riley's looking like the old Mike Riley.
Yeah. No, he is. He definitely is. I think a running game. They need a little more of the running game. They
Yeah,
didn't run the ball a lot, which I was a little surprised about. I know that Saskatchewan has a very good run defense. I don't think it was that good that you only have Shaq Cooper run the ball 2 times. Like, they also didn't have the ball a lot. That also impacted it. But I think if I'm BC, Michael Riley's been good, but we have to make sure you're not putting it all on Michael Riley, because teams are going to game plan for that.
no interceptions for Michael Riley,
Important.
and then 259 yards, 67.6%, 23 of 34, the actual number. Those are statistics that could lead to his team winning. And as long as he keeps doing that, they're going to win more than their share. And in winning more than their share, he sets up a great opportunity. And this guy, I know how hungry BC is for a Grey Cup, and the BC fans, they're really excited about this guy, and they're really excited about this team, and they should be.
And it's
The
showing.
same is true. Yeah, and the same is true for Saskatchewan.
It's showing. Yeah, it's showing in BC too, because that place has been getting more fans.
Absolutely.
And
You
they're
know,
doing
we would
great things too. I wanted to bring up the shirt that they wore
go
with
ahead. Go ahead. Bring it up. You got it.
for
Take seconds.
for
You get the last
for
word.
the indigenous community. They wore those special orange T-shirts, which were phenomenal. We need more of that in the CFL because I think now that appeals to a bigger audience, and BC is finding a way now. After years of it looked like they were going to be in a tough position, new ownership comes in, and it's no coincidence that it's been on the uprise right now with the team being successful.
Absolutely. And good for them. New ownership. They can concentrate on what needs to be done.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.